again, bringing that, the body into awareness is, it's fantastic, and really people are really responding to it. So it's great.
Fan-bloody-tastic, and brave. You're really brave at jumping in. Well done, you. Fantastic. Great stuff. Great, Sadie. Delighted. That's brilliance. Oh my God. Okay. All right. So what am I to do, Leona? Facebook. That's what I'm to do. Record has been pressed. Okay. So let's just move to Facebook and then we'll come back in. Day 4. Okay. Day 4, can you believe it's the last day? Okay. Go live. Brilliant. Okay. Yeah, Leona, just you let me know whenever that's whenever we're live there. I'm just going to mute everybody that has come in.
We're all good on Facebook, all live.
All good and live on Facebook. All good and well on Facebook. So it's our final evening. Can you imagine that? How's everybody feeling? Does anybody have any questions before we begin? Where are you all? How does that feel? How is the information fitting and feeling for you so far? All good. Yeah, all good. Anybody, any questions? We've one question, I have one question to answer that came through during the week, and we'll answer that in a wee minute. But anybody else, any questions, throw in the chat there, and I will make sure that we'll answer those questions before the end of the session. So we are diving into the bottom end of the diamond, the root cause end. Everybody got a picture of that diamond in their heads, in their minds, or do you want me to pull it back up? Is everybody happy enough for that diamond? Okay. I will pull it back up at some stage.
Minutes.
So we began day 1 looking at what we now understand as the multiple issues with client exchange. The multiple issues, and inside client exchange is, I want you to think about this, is all of the ways that the client will communicate their story. So that's what client exchange actually means. All of the triggers, all of the stories, all of the people, all of the places, all of the things, all of the ways, all of the projections, all the protection thoughts, all of the ways in which the mind reiterates the story to you, the therapist. Everybody happy enough that they understand what therapeutic exchange is and how messy therapeutic exchange can get, how difficult it can be to be in that place, regurgitating the same stuff. Everybody happy? And then we went and moved into the body, and we talked about moving to the body in a very, very slow way. So we weren't in the body or in the sensations of anxiety quite yet. We were low kind of level somatic feelings, physical feelings first, titrating soft and gently, creating good levels of introspection, rewiring fundamentally our mind's ability to read that somatic, emotional, physical energy that is in us, which is what introspection is. And for a lot of us, and you can tell me on the chat, for a lot of us, and especially for a lot of our clients, there would have been no levels of co-regulation, or very low levels of co-regulation as children. And low levels of co-regulation of children create this disconnect from the body, create no introspection. And when there's no introspection, when you come away from your own introspection, what happens is all of that data that would normally go to the brain and be co-regulated gets confused. And so we have these experiences inside us and inside our clients that they have felt fear, or they felt anxiety, or they felt shut down, and the language and the understanding of that gets messed up. So then we were looking at creating that introspection in a softer way, creating this psychosomatic unity, creating this beautiful place where the client can connect to their mind and connect to their body, have better metacognition, blah, 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 blah. And then we get into, right? And then we get into the heart of the matter, which is maps and patterns. And we could see the difference in maps and patterns and how that creates tolerance. So hopefully this is a 5 minutes explanation of the model. And then we created this tolerance. And from that tolerance of both symptoms and body and of the mind's products, we could look then at root cause. Now, with that in mind, let me just share my screen. Let's see. There it is there. Now, everybody see that? Everybody happy enough? So that, what I did there now was just an example. All the reasons for the therapeutic exchange that we diligently went through, all of the ways that we get into the body, which is eventually maps and patterns, all of this tolerance that we create, which is part A, and then how quite naturally from all of that work, quite naturally there is this deepening of the root cause. And that's where we begin our work today, in and around core threats and key threats. And we're going to differentiate between the two. And we're going to have a wider look at why we are threatened, why our nervous system remains on high alert, why it stays on high alert, why it remains on high alert, why it can feel like we're continuously on high alert. And so to explain that, and then to understand the actual complete and utter differences between what the mind produces in products of core wounds and the core wounds themselves. And we're going to have a client example. Is everybody happy enough with that? So we're down in core, we're down in root cause. So root cause for me and root cause for any clients that come to any of our clearing specialists. They have normally been around the block for a while. So any of our clients, or any of our clearing specialists, or any of our anxiety specialists are normally sought out for their understanding of root cause. And root cause for me is a game changer when it comes to anxiety. And it is the difference. I want you to keep this in your mind tonight, these two words, okay? It is the difference between being helpful and being curative. Because there is no way that any of the interventions that are out there are not helpful. Is that fair enough? They are absolutely helpful. They're absolutely regulatory. They're absolutely helpful in their own unique way. But what I have come to understand in me and what I have come to see in thousands of clinical hours of practice is that when we're dealing with anxiety, helpful isn't enough. The curative is what people look for. Now, it's a very difficult thing to talk about the cure for anxiety, because what we do understand is that whilst we are living and breathing, our nervous system will react to threats. So we can't switch this off. This isn't like some, I'm not talking about switching off our nervous system. But what I'm talking about, and this is really important, is I'm talking about switching off the curative factor, switching off the threats that lie dormant at the heart of most of our experiences of panic, anxiety, and shutdown. Is everybody clear about the differences, the difference in that? We're not saying we're obviously cannot, full frontal lobotomies is not on the cards here. We cannot take out the mechanism that warns us against threat, thanks be to God. And nor would we ever be suggesting that. But what we are talking about when we talk about root cause is we are talking about understanding the root cause of the threat that is active in the body and mind. Is everybody happy enough for that? And does anybody have a question? So the curative element of this model is to look for the root cause, to look for the threat that is active. And inside the course, it's the first module is the understanding the active threat. See, if you understand the active threat, you will be 10 steps ahead, not of your client, but 10 steps ahead of your treatment plan, because you'll spot the active threat the minute the client sits in your office. You'll not be lost in the maze of story. You'll not be lost in the maze of projection thoughts or protection thoughts. You'll not be lost in that maze. You will be able to, from that story, just see where the active threat is. So that's what I want you to pay attention to today, all right? The active threat. The threat that is thread through all of the stories, the threat that is thread through all of the people, all of the places, all of the things, every way in which the mind produces warnings, protections against this active threat, which is often unconscious. So, everybody happy enough with that? Can we move on? Is that okay? Okay, all right. So let's look at the two types of threats that I pay particular or like to look at particularly. And the first is a core threat. Now, core threats I like to see as existential threats. They're core to the human condition. They're core threats to the organism. They're existential threats. They're things like death, the threat of death, the threat of the loss of self. Everybody with me? The threat of continuous pain. Yeah. So these types of existential threats in the system, we call those core threats. Now, what's interesting about core and key threats are, you will know if your client has had a core threat because it is directly related to the types of physical symptoms the client is displaying. If a client is coming under you in panic and in shutdown, then we know we're in something that's quite existential. Does that make sense? So the correlation between the physical symptoms and the type of threat is huge. So the higher the physical symptoms on the spectrum of nervous system activation, then the more likely we are to be hitting these core threats. The more likely is that your client has one of these active core threats on them. Everybody happy enough for that? So it gets a wee bit more complicated. Key threats. Key threats are threats, experiences that the system cannot have, cannot replay, cannot re-experience, cannot go back to, cannot live in, cannot have in any shape or fashion. They're often core experiences or core wounds that the client is trying to keep themselves away from. Often it's unconscious. Yeah, so I'm going to pull up a graphic in a moment and I'm going to explain what a core experience is or a core wound is. And for any of my people that are visual, you'll love this wee graphic, all right? But it explains, again, this totality experience. And I've talked about the totality of anxiety, the totality of nervous system activation, including anxiety and shutdown. But I want to talk about the totality of the experiences that cause key threats in the system. Now, if you're human and you've lived a life, you're going to have one or two of these in your system. It's just the way the human condition is. Okay? And I want you to think about trauma from a small t perspective and a tall t perspective. Because trauma, when we understand trauma in that way, then we can see that these experiences can happen in small t situations and tall t situations. So whilst ACEs is helpful, some of our clients may be experiencing core and key threats that haven't come from and don't originate from ACEs. Everybody familiar with ACEs? Everybody knows what I'm talking about when I say the word ACEs. Okay, adverse childhood experiences. So I have seen multiple clients, multiple, digits of clients who have not had any big life altering events that will be worthy of ACEs, but still have carried core and key threats. And that has been difficult. Because in normal assessments, there is no reason for their anxiety. But these core and key threats have been active in their systems from moments that weren't what we would just understand as adverse childhood experiences or adverse experiences in adulthood. Is everybody with me? So when I show you this, I want you to think across that spectrum of experiences. Small t, big T. If it hurts this way, then it's likely, yes, car accidents, Gwen, absolutely. But car accidents is a great example of a threat system of why your body will be threatened, but because it's physical and it's happened and it's in your experience and you understand it and you can put your hand on it, you can put your mind it, you say, I've had a car accident, that's why I'm afraid. They're easy to talk about. But what happens is these experiences that we're about to talk about are unconscious. So you don't know why they're active in your system. Does that make sense? You don't understand why they're low level speaking through your body or sometimes high level speaking through your body. So let's share this and then we'll see where we go. Yeah, intergenerational and epigenetics. Still be an energy in the body, still be a message, still be something, so that they're sourced from somewhere. Threats are sourced from somewhere and they'll have some knowledge. Pre-verbal ones are still felt in the body, and even while there's no memory of them, you can still connect to that energy and work with that energy that belongs to those pre-verbal threats. So what do we see? Can everybody see that? Yeah. Okay, so let me just take you through it, okay? An experience where there was a high frequency of felt sense, a high frequency emotion, emotions, multiple emotions, high frequency emotions, multiple of, detailed language patterns, detailed meaning, nervous system activation, to whatever level the nervous system is activated at. Defense system activation, so the entire defense system kicks in. A physical way of being, a somatic way of being. Yeah. So these are this is the fallout, if you like, from very difficult experiences. And this is the difference between this is understanding the totality of the experience. Okay, now this is a very top level understanding of it. We're about to get into it in much more detail through a client's example. So what we have here is we have detailed language patterns that are often familiar. Emotion described as gut-wrenching, unbearable. What happens when emotion is gut-wrenching and unbearable? Then the threat system is warned because it's too difficult. What happens when there's thoughts that are repetitive and familiar and difficult and create these gut-wrenching emotions? Then the system warns itself against itself, warns itself against its own thoughts. Sensations in the body that are difficult to hold, somatics, pain can be part of this. I've seen many clients that have core wounded experiences that still hold pain in the body. Actually hold it physically in the body. Nervous system activation, dorsal shutdown. Now we talked earlier, right, about the totality of the experience of nervous system activation. Yeah, we talked about the multiple sensations, the multiple interpretations. We've got all of that going on in that one point. All of that is going on in that one point. Never mind the originating emotion, never mind the originating meaning. All of that is going on in that one point. Are we starting to see the depth of the experience of these experiences that our clients are ultimately afraid of? Yeah. So there's a multi-layered experience here that has happened somewhere at some time and some place. And this, our clients, ourselves, us, we are clients, ourselves are aware that there is a threat and is connected to these key threats. Some of us are aware, some of us are not aware. But what I want you to think about for a wee moment is, I want you to think about the totality of that experience. And let's put some names under that. Let's put some meat onto that. All right. Let's put some experience onto that. Yeah. If that was that 30-year-old man that we talked about last night and the night before, if that was him, and he's had an experience in childhood, yeah, of being incredibly, incredibly, incredibly vulnerable in a moment, yeah, in a moment where he has felt incredibly vulnerable. His nervous system was activated to the extent where he went on deep panic and dorsal. He felt incredibly shameful of being so vulnerable in that moment. He blamed himself for not being strong enough, big enough, manly enough. Everybody following me? In that moment, there was no one that was protecting him against this attack, against this verbal attack. There was no one protecting him. He felt the deep loss of connection. Everybody follow me? He felt the deep sense of sadness and anger at non-protection of those who were standing around him. So here we have a multi-layered experience and multiple things happening within the body. We have multiple meanings, we have multiple understandings. The mind is making many suggestions. The experience is overwhelming. Imagine feeling shame and blame and loss of connection and anger and feeling weak and small and no protection and feeling the depth of the nervous system activation. Imagine that totality of an experience and not being able to do anything about it, but just absolutely take it. Now, if that is the totality of the experience, and within that, the totality of the nervous system activation experience, can you imagine what that would do to that person? And can we understand why the threat system might warn the client against any variation of that? So if we understand that, then my next question to you is this. If we've just seen that, right? We've seen the nervous system activation, we've talked about the defense system, we've talked about the somatics, the body, all of the variations, the shame, the blame. That client moves on with his life and that event leaves him. Yeah. But as he gets older, what is the one thing that his neuroception starts watching for, do you think? Let me know in the chat. What are the ways in which this threat can be activated? So what might he see? What might he hear? What might he be near experiencing in this now as this 39-year-old adult that might warn him that that's on its way? Let me know in the chat. anything that would show his vulnerability. Brilliant, Fidelma. Anything that would show any blame. Being confronted. Brilliant. Being beside any shame. Being in a room where he could be shamed. Being in a room where he's seen as weak. Being in a room with a number of people, which is similar to the early situation. Absolutely. And what's really amazing about that is that that's a direct link. But this stuff isn't normally a direct link because the neuroception is so good at picking up even the slight variation of it. Yeah. If neuroception is so good at picking up even the smallest hint of it, that it'll go off. So we mightn't even be in the exact same levels of vulnerability. We mightn't even be in the exact same levels of shame or levels of blame or levels of non-protection. Even the slightest bit of anger might trigger the entire pattern because this is now a pattern inside the client. Does that make sense? Tone of voice, brilliance. Sandra. Triggers, senses. But what I'm trying to get you to see is how closely they're connected to the core threat or the key threat in this case. Is everybody following the logic of it? So what then will he bring if he's not available or aware of that key threat or where that key threat is in his body? What would he bring to session? And this is where it gets complicated, right? This is why therapeutic exchange gets complicated because he's not going to bring that event from his childhood because he's not connected to it. But he is going to bring the tone of voice that he doesn't like in his boss. He is going to bring the way that he feels left out of the lunchroom. He is going to bring the way that he feels weak because he's an overfeeler. It is, do you see the amount of narrative that may come here? Won't know why he gets so uncomfortable around people, thinks he's just awkward. What might he do? Sharon uses this the other night. He might blame neurodivergence. So are we starting to see from this key threat the many ways in which he would bring those tight, small threats and have conversations about those small threats that he's in awareness of? Is everybody following the frame of core threat connected to therapeutic exchange? We're back up on that model now. Yeah. So now we're really connected to this core threat, or sorry, key threat that could be a core threat. So now we have a client who's absolutely petrified of ever re-experiencing that totality of that again, even though he doesn't know what it is. And he just keeps talking to you about the men that he doesn't like and why he feels so weak and why he doesn't like his boss and why he thinks his boss in any moment is going to just show him up in front of everybody. And he knows it's irrational and he knows, you know, but he wants you to help him. And this is one of the questions that I got. If the NICE guidelines are saying that the recommendations or that from an evidence-based point of view, thought reframes or thought distortions and reframes are one of the best forms of treatment, why am I saying that they're not? That was a question. I think it's a really helpful question. And this example helps us understand it. Say, for example, this client came and he was sure that his boss was in any moment going to pounce on him, going to victimize him. And you worked with that thought in of itself. Couldn't you reframe that in a healthy way? Couldn't you help him see that the boss wouldn't have, couldn't you? And for a while, wouldn't there be relief there? Wouldn't there for a while, there be some sort of remedy that this boss isn't the threat? What happens when that boss leaves? and the other boss comes and he's a different tone of voice, boom, back on it again. So the evidence is gathering evidence connected to the thoughts, but not connected to the core wounds. Yeah. And this is really, really, really important. If we go after these products of the core threat, then yes, for a moment, if we play in the products, we can regulate them, we can soften them, we can reframe them, we can help the client see past them. But you can be sure as hell that what you will find is that you will find if you don't work in that core threat, key threat, that those thoughts will find a different form. They'll find a different place. They'll find a different face. And that is the differentiation here. I am not saying that they're not helpful in and of themselves for the moments that we're in. But when we're talking about being curative, then we're talking about working in the threats that are active in the body, that are pulsating through the body and speaking through the mind. Because these threats will find thousands of ways to speak through the mind. Now, the mind and the body are interconnected. We understand that. We don't work with one without working with the other. That's fine. That's okay. But what I'm particularly showing you here is a core or key threat from an experience of vulnerability that is active in the client. It's outside his conscious awareness, and it keeps asking, keeps shouting, keeps pointing that direction. Yeah. Does that make sense to you? And in that, we are not playing whack-a-mole with those thoughts. What we are doing, and here's the differentiation. It's only managing the here and now. We know that, Breda, right? We know that. We know and sometimes clients want us to help them to manage the here and now. And sometimes, like I started with, the client wants a deeper understanding so that they can switch the thread off. Yeah. So this is really important for us because inside this model, what I'm suggesting is that we use those thoughts to gain a deeper understanding of what lies at the heart of the experience. We use those thoughts with empathy, with congruence. We don't dismiss them. It's called deepening. Inside the program, it's called deepening. We deepen. Why is that so difficult that the boss could say that? Why is that so difficult? What is so difficult in that? So let's imagine, let's play. We're actually nearly aggravating the idea of it rather than trying to rescue him from the initial thought. And there's the differentiation. Will we create more pain in the short term? Absolutely. But if you've done all the body work in the diamonds, do you see how safe that would be? But we are deepening. We're deepening in the understanding, and we are informed by these ideas of core threats and key threats. I hope I'm making a passionate appeal. If your client is ready, if the body work has been done, if it's safe, and your client is looking to see the deeper meaning, then we take them deeper. We move beyond what is presented, understanding that what is presented is often products. Yes, we can work with the products and it's helpful, but it's not curative. And so what we do, and what I advocate for in this model, is that I advocate for, if your client is willing and not willing, is actually asking you to help them deepen, is leading you to deepen with them because it's safe to do so, because the body is safe to do so now, then we're in understanding the experience that they have been threatened by and continue to be threatened by. And in that healing, in the healing of that, somatically, emotionally. In the undoing of that, we release the threat. And releasing the threat is, you know, life-changing. Absolutely life-changing. This is where the curative part of it is life-changing. I know what it's like to release the threat. I know what it's like for it to be life-threatening for me. It's life-changing. A life-threatening threat. Now, I want to add a wee bit of a complication because I made that sound also easy, right? And we know it's not so easy, right? That's the truth, right? I want to add a wee tiny bit of complication. I want to bring the core threat and the key threat together. Yeah. If the client perceives, if I go back to that place, because their mind will warn them not to go back, not to go anywhere near it, that'll have red circled it. If I go back to that place, could I be in continuous pain? Will I get out of it? Will I ever escape from it? Once I feel it, will it be continuous? What is that likely to do to the client? What was that, Monica? Excuse me. You typing for me? Can I see it? Re-traumatizing. It'll activate the core threat, the existential core threat in them. Because the human condition doesn't want to live in pain, continuous pain, because that would be to thwart the survival instinct, doesn't want to die, and it doesn't want to lose itself. So any of those key threats that would create that, you will get this existential fear, this existential difficulty in the client. So in a way, we're always keeping an eye for core threats and key threats and knowing that we have to work sometimes simultaneously inside each threat. Did he escalate? Did he work? Now, see all of that wonderful, wonderful, you know, reframing work. Now we can start to do that inside the core experience. But if we do that too early, we're fixing products, not root cause. How does that feel, Lise? How is that landing? Sadie, how's that landing for you? Does that make sense? Have I made enough of an impassioned plea? If I was in a court of law, would you believe me? Because it's so, look, you see the exhaustion that most people feel from helpful but not curative interventions is real. And you know who they blame? Because they don't blame you. They don't blame the therapist. They don't blame the helper. They blame themselves. They blame themselves for not being able to get out of it. They blame themselves for being weak. They blame themselves. They turn it right back in and on themselves. And it compounds the helplessness of dealing with anxiety. So what this model does is it seeks to go deeper than the current offerings. It seeks to go a layer underneath, but it also seeks to create sovereignty and agency, not management and helpfulness, sovereignty and agency over the body, and sovereignty and agency over the threat that's active. What that does is it means that the client then has their own capacity, skills to understand the threat system in themselves and switch it off. Not manage it, not be in these places of, you know, regulating it just because they can regulate it. Oh, thanks, Kerry. I'm glad it's making sense for you, Kerry. Delighted, good. So that's what's different about this model. It is probably an addition to what we understand is helpful, but it goes beyond being helpful and it moves towards being curative. It moves towards removing the threats. And we know, listen, that our clients aren't coming with one threat. Some of them are coming with 2 and 3 childhood threats, childhood wounds, pre-verbal wounds. We know that the work is cumbersome and heavy when we get under the roots of it, when we get under the bowels of the experience. We know that they're coming with multiple core threats. We know that the body creates its own core threat, because if someone feels that they're going to die from a panic attack, that's a core threat, and that's, you know, that gets added to the system. We know the complications of this. But in so many ways, this 4 days was about me getting across the message that if we want to move beyond what is helpful, if we want to move beyond what is helpful and into curative, then we must do it differently. We must do it differently. And that's a great question. It's repeatedly too painful to go to root cause. That indicates to me that there's not enough body work done, Caroline. That indicates to me that there's not enough what we call emotional mastery work done. That indicates to me that the client is pushing it away. Yeah. Yes, and Kerry, real, it's real. That is absolutely real. So if a client is talking about it being too painful, then the client is talking about it being too difficult to be in the re-experiencing of it. And that indicates to me that there's body work, emotional mastery work that needs done. And that's all that early work before you would pull anybody down. And I think it's a great question, because it helps, gives us warning signals when a client isn't ready, and we don't pull them there. We work on the reason why it's too painful. We work on the understanding, and we stay there until it's safe. So when I talk about root cause, I'm talking about root cause after all that body work. Yeah. And that's incredibly important. Root cause, it's a great question, Sharon. The very thing the client thinks is root cause proves not to be. It's a great question. And that's again the mind's functions. The mind produces its idea of what it thinks it is. And that's it, and we understand that as a top-down approach. What's interesting about working in the body first, and anybody that's clearing specialist will know this. Anybody that when we work in the body first, then it's the body that informs the mind, and what the client thinks is root cause, the body has informed them that it's something different. But that's all to be explored down there. That's all to be explored in root cause. It's fine. Anybody else, just because you can doesn't mean you should. My favorite saying, Monica's been on our emotional mastery, and all I do is say, just because you can doesn't mean you do. And it's my favorite saying, just because you can doesn't mean you do. You're led by the client. You're led by their capacity, always. Absolutely, always. And the exploration of root cause is, you know, it's not for the faint-hearted, but it is curative. But for tonight, all that I want you to see, right, in these 4 days together, all that I want you to see is what is produced from these core wounds, what is produced from these core threats, key threats, is often the stories, the layered stories that you're hearing in session. Client isn't ready to go to root cause from that place. There's an awful lot of body work, safety work, you know, titration work that needs done. But what I'm really saying to you is don't get caught in the story, work in the body. You work in the body, don't get caught in the products. Don't get caught trying to reframe stuff unless the client is directly telling you that's what they want you to do and they want some helpfulness in these moments. But listen for, yes, onion layers, Teresa, absolutely. Listen for, when you get a client in front of you, listen for the core and key threats. Now, what I would love you to do, right? See in the chat, can you now from this 45-minute presentation, can you now recognize some core key threats that might be active in clients that you're working with? Let me know. Let me know if you're starting to spot stuff that may be deeper than what the client has presented. Because that'll be you telling me that you understand this stuff. That'll be you telling me that you're going to go and make good of these 4 days that we've had together. You can see it, Monica. Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else see it? And anybody care to name what they think might be there? Let me know in the chat. You see it, Sadie? Fear of vulnerability. Brilliant, Sadie. Did you get that? Yes. Was that clear as day to you? Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Anybody else? You need to be heard, to be recognized. The fear of what others think of you. So I would encourage Monica and Sharon to deeper than that. That's probably one level of it. So it's deeper than that. What others think of you is deeper than that. That will be one level. Fear of dying, brilliant, Caroline. Insecurity, not feeling safe, brilliant, Carrie. What does safety mean for that client? What's the details? Fear of loss, brilliant, Kira. So what does loss mean? What's the experience of loss? Fear of nothingness, Sadie. Yes, absolutely. What does that nothingness feel like? What's the experience of it? Why was it? Why can the client remedy that? You know we're in the heart of it. Okay. Brilliant. And deeper again than that, Sharon, the feeling of not being listened to. What's that underneath that? The loss of self. Brilliant, Joe. Yes, that's a core threat. Yeah. So again, fear of aloneness. Brilliant, Sadie. Fear of failure to push them back deeper. Fear of not being loved. Is that what you got to when I pushed you there? Yes. The fear of not being loved. Yes. Can you imagine what it feels not to be loved? No safety, no security, no connection. Now we're in the heart of the experience. Low self-esteem, self-worth, brilliant, absolutely brilliant, fantastic. And we're there and we're moving with the client into a deeper awareness of what this means for them. And we're moving into root cause. Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. How does that feel, Lise? Now, do you know that I have notes every night? Pages and pages and pages and pages of notes. And never look at one of them. Never. Never look down at them ever. Okay, but I have something I want to read you out, all right? Because it's really important. The fear of ridicule, Willie. What's the experience of ridicule? You can imagine what ridicule feels like. It probably feels shameful. It probably feels vulnerable. You can imagine. And then we have that circle with all the spikes coming out of it. And the client's trying to save themselves from that experience. Brilliant. Well, you wouldn't have done this course before, would you? Yeah. Oh, brilliant. But I know, Carrie, it's in my bones. This stuff is in my bones. But like any good, Carrie says she noticed that I don't use notes. It's in my bones. But do you see about 10 minutes before I'm about to come on, I panic? Like any good human being does. And thinks, Jesus, I need to write something down. Keep me honest. So I'd be sweating, panicking, throat tight in there writing away, thinking, oh, I must say this, I must say that. And then when I get in it, then it's like you're in flow and then it just all comes. But this one I do have to read. Working in root cause, guys. Working in root cause creates separation. Separation, another word for separation is cognitive diffusion. Okay, what does that mean? If I know why I feel the way I do, if I know that at the heart of my experience, I'm afraid of vulnerability. When the boss comes in and he's really, really hateful, because I know my root cause, I don't get attached to him. I don't get attached to the story of him. Because I am able to understand that I'm feeling threatened. I'm feeling that I could be vulnerable in that moment. It helps separate from the mind's functions to the reality. Does that make sense? It's an amazing separation tool. Yeah. Okay. So it creates, because it's an amazing separation tool, it creates a natural ability in the client to move away from protections and projections. And what you find is the client doesn't come with those stories anymore. They come with the understanding of vulnerability and where it's showing up, but they right back and they talking about vulnerability, vulnerability, vulnerability becomes the key focus. Does that make sense, Steve? And can you see how that would work? Brilliant. And you don't need to do that without reframing. And you're not spending all your energy in reframing. Does that make sense? It creates a sense of somatic discharge. The mind's job is to source why the body's in pain. See, when the mind knows what the body, see, when the mind understands, there's an automatic sense of nervous system deactivation because there's an answer. You ever had an answer to something and you're like, oh. Understanding root cause has the same effect. And it creates natural pendulation. Because you go back to this place of root cause that you can work with. And it creates self-regulation. You don't get caught out here in all of the stories. You're just able to sit and deepen from that place. So it has many benefits once we get there, but we don't drag anybody kicking and screaming there. We do it in this, I'm just going to show you. We do it in this, in a way that creates tolerance. So we have all of this therapeutic exchange. We move beautifully and they settle in the body. We create this tolerance. When we create this tolerance, we're able to move under root cause. When we move under root cause, the therapeutic exchange is easier, softer. The regulation is easier, softer. The client is now not talking about the things that trigger them. They're talking about why they're triggered, what that trigger is, where that trigger is sourced, where the detail of that is. And they're talking about how to heal that. And you are in the body of the material that you've been trying to get to. But you're there in a different way. You're not managing the client's day-to-day experience of a core threat anymore. I'm going to say that again, it's really important. When you use this model, you are not managing the client's day-to-day experience of root cause anymore. You're moving towards the cure of that threat system. Is anybody any questions at this stage? How does that feel to you? Anybody any questions? Fire them up there. No? Okay. So how that landed for you and how that formed for you, I hope will be really, 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 really helpful to your clients, even in that short space of time that we've had together. So I would be delighted if you were implementing some of those small suggestions and were as brave as Sadie was last week doing that. But good on you, Sadie. Well done. And keep me informed about how that's going. But, you know, that is the intention behind this. I want to try, my mission is to try, not to try, but to change the way anxiety, change the way nervous system activation is treated and trained. That is absolutely my mission. So these 4 days are part of that mission. There are some of these will only spend the 4 days with me, and there's some of these that'll move on to the program with me. Either way, I have secured that mission. Some of these may come back and do the training with me, but all that I care is that you implement it. Absolutely implement what you've learned, even in a small way, into your practice. For those of you that want a deeper practice, for those of you that want the how-to, not just the framework, not just the theory, the actual how-to. For those of you that want the skill of this skill of moving out of the exchange of products, moving into the body, the absolute skill of intricately titrating into the body, very gently, building introspection, the skill of building introspection, the skill of building metacognition, the skill of building psychosomatic unity. See, those three things alone, they take us, must be 6 weeks to go through in the program. Will it be 6 weeks, Breda? 6 weeks to go through those basic skills in the program. So I mean, the intricacies that we go into to create that level of safety, and then maps and patterns. So the skill of maps and patterns, because there's a great skill in maps and patterns that creates a lot of the sovereignty. So the skill of that. And then we have the other skill of deepening. How to deepen and the root cause. How to deepen beyond what is presented. How to deepen safely. How to ask the right questions. What are the protocols for asking the right types of questions that ladder quite safely the client into root cause, and how then to plug and play your own modalities. Does that make sense? Thank you, Wally. I'm delighted it's invaluable. Wally's saying that he's glad he did the training, it was invaluable to him. This is a system that'll fit on top of your own modalities, but it'll give you the skill, the literal step-by-step skill to ensure that you're working in root cause. Everybody happy enough for that? So if you wanted all of those skills, we kind of, the other one big thing that it does, I always forget to mention that, we have this kind of treatment plan at the end of it. And it's a way in which for you to, when a client comes in your door, they assess where they're at, they know the type of work that they need. So they step out what is needed. They inform the client of what you need, what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, and what time frames you think you're going to do, and what financial commitment you think that has. That assessment alongside the treatment plan is what the client gets at the end of the training. It's what I teach you how to do, how to hold treatment discovery calls, how to hold treatment plans, give clients treatment plans, and how to hold assessments. Now, Tammy's might be on Facebook. I don't know if she is or not. But Tammy has made, and what she does, I think is wonderful. What she takes is the treatment plan, and a client will come into her, and she would use the assessment as a one-off kind of intensive. So she would assess the client in an intensive way, which means it might take a few hours. She gives the client a report about the work that she would do. The client has an idea of where they're going, what they're doing. And this is all before we do root cause, because we know root cause is a much longer time frame. But the client, for the first time, has an idea of where they're going and what the outcomes are. And you as a therapist have a plan, have a dedicated system, instead of this going on and not knowing where you're going and not knowing if you're going to be stuck in story for 20 years or not. I know that's hyperbole, but you get what I mean. So that's the end of the program. So the program starts with understanding the threat system. That's the first module. The second module is, I have no graphics, Leona. I'm useless, sorry. Leona will be giving out stink because she's created graphics around this. Starts with the second module of getting into the body. Maps and patterns is a full out module. Working with the fear of the fear, which is a massive module. That's really important. Working in root cause, how to deepen, and then we look at the treatment plan. It takes about 16 weeks to complete. So we work together for about 16 weeks. It's not a pre-recorded course. It's me and you live working every week. And it runs on a Tuesday from 3 to 5. So it's 2 hours of dedication a week. It's all of the sessions are recorded. So if you miss one, you can come back to it, it's fine. And what we then do at the end of that is we run under supervision so that I can see you doing this in practice. You can bring your clients to me and in our cohort, and we have a conversation and some supervision about how that went for you. We have also get skills practice, which wasn't available for you, Breda. So close your eyes, and Wally, close your ears and eyes, because this is an additional part of the course that we're putting on. We also have 3 weeks of skills where we teach theory, and I teach the theory directly to you. And then we have these skills, especially around maps and patterns, especially around deepening, especially around root cause. So we have 3 separate weeks of skills that we build on it, and we support you in developing the skills and developing the theory. The other big thing about it is that it's incredibly experiential. So you're going to deepen your own knowledge of yourself. You wouldn't come to one of my courses and not have an understanding of it within yourself. So we do it experientially, we do it theoretically, and then we do it in practice. It takes about 16 weeks to move through the course and come out the other end. The certification on it is working through each week, showing up, finishing your supervision, and there's some small assessments in the middle of it. It's not, the assessments aren't a major component of it. They're case studies. They're not a major component of it, and they're not to be worried about, and everybody panics about that. So that's all it is. That's what we've got. The price of it is, it's reduced by 40% for anybody attending the summit. So it's £795 for that 16-week course. And we start as soon as Monday. Yeah. Oh, thanks for that, Wally. It's also CPD'd, 13 hours of CPD on it. And it is also, you have your own live course forever. It never goes away. So even though I teach it live, you are in an academy where all of the recordings are kept and all of the documentation that sit alongside it, because there's reams and reams and reams of support and help and documentation, all of that sits alongside it. And you can print and download and go back to that as many times. So even though it's 16 weeks, it's a recorded course that you can keep coming back to. So it doesn't go anywhere, even though I teach it live. Yeah. So, that's a really important piece. No, it's not supported by the BACP, and I don't seek for it to be supported by the BACP, Sharon. So that's an important piece. Now, it's CPD accredited, but it's not a BACP supported accredited or a CPD course. So the differentiation of that's important. So we start on, I think we have 3 places left for June, and then we open up we have 3 places left for March, and then we start again in June. So the cohorts normally kind of fill up between now and the next one. So this one's in March and the next one's in June. So that is completely opened. I don't think there's 3 or 4 people on that course. So we only take 20 per course because I have to work. It's live and it's taught live. So we only take 20. So I think there's 17 places in June and 3 in this cohort for March. Is there anything else? There's a library of resources alongside it. There's loads of bonuses. There's courses on root cause analysis, courses on dealing with difficult, distressful emotions. There's a library of resources that sit in support of it. But and that's all part of the bonus price for the next few days. And there's also 2 months supervision that's obviously built into that. And that's free as well. So that being said, look at my wee cheeks are all red again. Thanks so much for your time and your attention. Thanks, Maggie. Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks. I hope that this has been as valuable to you as I have intended it to be, and that you go out and make a difference. And that you go out and make a real true difference to the people that are exhausted from managing anxiety, because that's exactly what it's supposed to do. Thank you so much, Sadie. Thank you, Sharon. Thanks so much. Brilliant. And for those of you that are joining me, I'm really looking forward to, this isn't the end of our conversations. This is only the beginning. For those of you that are joining me on the course, I'll see you on the inside. I'll see you very, very, very soon. And you'll be sick looking at me and hearing about me. in the next few weeks. So I will see you all soon, and thanks. And if anybody has any questions whatsoever, please send them our way. We're more than happy to answer them. Happy enough? Bye for now. Thanks for a great 4 days. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Shauna.
See
Bye.
you in June, Brandy. Delighted.
Thanks, Shauna.
Right. Oh, sorry, one more thing. There's a 4-pay option. If you haven't got it all, you can pay it in 4 lots. I always forget that, Leona, sorry. So if you haven't got the lump sum to start, you can pay up for it in four lots. So it's £225 over 4 months. So if you start it in June, you could have it paid for by the time you get to June. You know what I mean? So there's that 4-pay option. Sorry, I nearly forgot that. Does that make sense? Thanks, Leona, for that. I didn't see that. All right, take care. Bye for now. Bye. See you all later. Bye. 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 Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.